Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Hello, everyone, wherever you are, whatever your time zone. Welcome. This is AI Talk, and I am your host, Kevin Crane. Welcome to the show. Today, we are discussing the AI transformation in aviation. Now, artificial intelligence is rapidly reshaping the aviation industry from how we manage operations and safety to how we respond to real-time disruptions. As AI capabilities grow more advanced, aviation leaders are uniquely positioned to leverage these tools in high-stakes, high-complexity environments. But this transformation also brings unique challenges that require thoughtful leadership and innovation. So, in today's panel discussion, we'll explore three key areas. First, we'll look at the unique challenges faced by AI leaders in the aviation industry. Aviation faces a distinct set of hurdles that demand both technical and strategic agility. Then we'll explore how AI-driven weather intelligence is enhancing safety, efficiency, and real-time decision-making. Indeed, advanced AI models are now enabling faster, more accurate forecasts that directly impact routing, fuel planning, and passenger safety. And finally, how is aviation using AI to navigate disruptions caused by extreme weather? As climate-related disruptions increase, aviation's AI-driven response strategies offer valuable insights for resilience and adaptability across sectors. So we're going to dive in just a moment, but before we do, I want to say thank you to everyone attending today, and that includes you folks that are joining us on LinkedIn. Thank you, and hello to everyone joining us today on Zoom. During our discussion today, we'd like to hear from you too, so I'd like to encourage everyone attending today to participate. Just join in with your comments in the chat section, and if you have a question along the way, just jump on in. I will attempt to get some of your questions into the flow of the show, and we'll have a few minutes perhaps also at the end for your questions. Excuse me. All right, let's bring aboard our great panel of guests today, starting with Dr. John Williams. John is a Senior Director, Applied Meteorological Science at the Weather Company. John, are you there?
I'm here. Thank you, Kevin.
Hello, John.
Happy
Where
to
are you
be here.
calling in from today?
I'm in Andover, Massachusetts.
Andover, Massachusetts. Wonderful. Well, John, thank you so much for being with us today. Also joining us today is Sonny Westcott. Sonny is a Federal Emergency Response Chief Meteorologist. Sonny, welcome to the show today. Where are you calling in from?
Hi, I'm calling in from Naples, Florida at the Health ISAC conference.
Wonderful. Well, Sonny, it's great to have you with us. Thank you so much. Also joining us today is Priyanka Dang, data scientist and AI strategist at Airbus. Priyanka, welcome aboard. Where are you calling in from today?
Yeah, thank you, Kevin. I'm calling in from Hamburg, Germany. And hello, everyone.
Wonderful. All the way from Germany. Thank you so much for being with us today, Priyanka. And also Dr. Tim Niznik. Tim is Director of Analytics at American Airlines. Tim, are you with us?
I am with you. Great to be
Hello,
here.
Tim. Where are you calling in from today, Tim?
I'm calling in from the great state of Texas.
Wonderful. All right. Well, folks, thank you so much for joining us today. We have a packed agenda today, so I want to get right into it. I'd like to start our discussion today by drawing our attention to an article published recently by Aviation Source News, and it talks about British Airways and how they have significantly improved their flight punctuality at Heathrow Airport through a £100 million investment in artificial intelligence. Look, AI systems now analyze passengers' travel plans in real time to assign aircraft to optimal landing stands. And additionally, AI tools are proactively rerouting flights to avoid adverse weather. I'm curious what the panel thinks about these improvements on behalf of British Airways. John, what are your thoughts on the article?
Yeah, thanks, Kevin. Well, first of all, congratulations to British Airways. It's a wonderful accomplishment, and I think that's a great example of how a data-driven approach to a well-defined problem with a clear metric, on-time departures in this instance, can yield huge benefits for an airline. And one element of the story that caught my eye was how British Airways is substantially reducing delays by proactively avoiding areas of poor weather, and how they're working to provide a common situational awareness to pilots, cabin crews, and aircraft dispatch teams. And I can say I'm proud that we at the Weather Company are part of that. We partner with British Airways as their weather provider, And they're a launch partner for our next generation flight following solution, Maverick Dispatch, which includes a number of AI-driven insights that we're developing, like airport capacity modeling, terminal airspace convective risk, alerting within the dispatcher workflows, and a lot more. So we hope to continue helping their fleet avoid areas of poor weather and make confidence decisions faster.
Now, Sonny, John is absolutely right. In the first quarter of 2025, 86% of flights at Heathrow departed on time, British Airways, a substantial increase from 2008, where it was just 46%. What are your thoughts on the article, Sonny?
Yeah, so when we're looking at the changes that we're seeing in the weather patterns, everything from extreme heat to severe thunderstorms, especially here in the US, where we have a very large area of both, we are seeing an increase in delays, a lot of flight disruptions within the heat margin as well, that there's a decrease in the amount of luggage you're able to put on the aircraft. As it gets hotter, the aircraft gets less lift. So we're actually able to utilize a lot of our large language models, a lot of the sensor data that we have to track the pattern that's starting to develop and to really look at what does it mean to change operations in the windows of time in the US. Not to say that, we can continue to fly through some of these pivotal conditions going forward, but that we can change when we're flying and where we're flying. We're also able to look at how do we communicate that to the different passengers to be able to say, but maybe it can get into Baltimore.
All right. Well, Priyanka, this effort is supported by 100 data scientists and 600 additional staff at Heathrow. What are your thoughts on this article, Priyanka?
Yeah, I also would like to congratulate British Airways because it's a very good example how we can use AI in aviation. So and what stood out to me, it's the use of the real-time data. So how they have used the real-time data from the flights, from operation, and how they bring it together, because data is fuel for AI. And so AI, we can build the layer of AI with the strong data around it. So I really would like to congratulate, and I'm really amazed what they have achieved at such a busy airport. Yeah, so looking forward to have such more use cases.
Now, Tim, this is part of a broader £7 billion investment aimed at enhancing reliability and customer service at Heathrow. Tim, what are your thoughts on the article?
Well, as a fellow One World partner, I'm glad to see innovation and improvements being done at British Airways. But the thing that caught my eye was when they talked about the technology and the AI as being game changing. But in my perspective, the game has already changed. This is almost as much about staying in the game and making sure that you're staying competitive, you're staying where the industry is going. And the other thing that caught my eye with is, well, AI is very sexy and it's very intriguing, but don't discount the less sexier things that they talk about, which is significant improvements into the IT infrastructure and into staffing to enable reliable technology for those frontline employees. And that is really producing with the AI the secret sauce of improved performance. And the last thing I saw was that, hey, the summer season is about to start. That'll be the really test for this. So I'm excited to see how it performs this summer.
Well, we will see how it plays out, but the article is available here in the chat feature shortly. It's from Aviation Source News. British Airways slashes flight delays with AI innovation. Take a look, everyone, and let us know what you think about the article and what are your thoughts on the impact of AI in systems across the world here as we move forward. All right, very good. Folks, I'd like to move us on to our first discussion point today, and that is to discuss the unique challenges for AI leaders in the aviation industry. Now, according to Zion Research, the global artificial intelligence market in aviation is projected to experience a significant growth over the coming years, well over $7 billion by 2032. This rapid growth underscores the increasing adoption of AI technologies in aviation, presenting both opportunities and challenges for industry leaders. John, how should we approach integrating AI solutions into an ecosystem that can be used across airlines and airports across the world?
Yeah, it's a great question. It's an amazing moment in our history of technology. The challenges are significant, but the opportunities are amazing as well. I think one of the big problems that we have to deal with is in an industry for which safety is absolutely paramount. We need to ensure that we're injecting AI in a way that's appropriate and trustworthy. And whenever you have a new technology like this, you have to establish trust. When you can develop a technology in an open, collaborative way with all the users, that's very helpful. When you can deploy it in a way that promotes a common situational awareness across all the decision makers involved, that is also paramount. I would say also one of the big challenges is maintaining appropriate data across airlines and airports and governmental agencies to be able to train and evaluate the algorithms, and using metrics that are clear for what the success is going to be. And I also want to highlight just an issue that comes up with weather all the time, which is dealing with uncertainty. There are a lot of elements of the operational environment that are uncertain, but weather is certainly one of the top of those. And your best optimized plans can be knocked down in an instance by unexpected weather. So how can we use the wealth of knowledge we have behind the scenes of all the different ways that the weather might play out to proactively plan and mitigate the potential impacts on our operations? So that's something we're working hard at the weather company. And I think that feeds into trustworthy data and common situational awareness.
Now, Priyanka, John mentioned safety, and of course, the aviation industry operates under strict regulatory oversight. From your point of view, how do you feel that will impact the pace and scope of AI innovation and adoption within Airbus and beyond?
Yeah, sure. So as John mentioned, safety is a paramount for Airbus as well and for aviation in general. And AI cannot be black box. So today we have several models, and if we don't have explainability around the AI, I think we cannot deploy it for our customers. So for sure, we are also at Airbus, we are taking this into more seriously to have this explainability, sustainability, and also the other features, trustworthy AI as well. So we are in close contact with the regulatories like EASA, Euro CAE, FAA. So we are deploying the AI in our processes in manufacturing across the products very carefully by reviewing all the restrictions that have been put by EU AI Act, and we are closely following the all the acts there.
Now, Sunny, Priyanka, we were talking about regulatory oversight, but from your perspective in federal emergency response, what are the biggest institutional or structural challenges in adopting AI for aviation-related operations and emergency response?
Yeah, we definitely have a pretty wide array when we're talking about emergency response and AI implications. We have the capability to do notifications for any of the extreme weather events, to be able to say that this weather is notably getting worse upstream, to use the automated sensors that are available at the airports to say, as this is progressing towards your airport, be aware that temperatures are climbing after they reach a certain threshold. Baggage may be too hot. You can't park aircraft on the tarmac for very long. You're going to see more damage in the way of the materials, in the way of the vehicles, more tire blowouts, battery degradation in the different parts of actually operating an airport. You see more threats to the vehicles that are parked outside in the parking garages, more risk for liability, not just for your staff, your security, but for general society as they interact with your facility. So we're able to do a lot more in the way of notification, getting the information out, looking at what's getting hottest where is also a big part of where we can use AI to be able to help us get through all of that data, all of the information that's available at that scale, so that we're able to pivot those operations properly to make sure that we're operating at full capacity with consideration, and we're keeping our different industry staff safe, everything from TSA through baggage handlers, through the drivers, for each of the different portions of our aircraft operations side of the house. So everything from aircraft in the sky to aircraft at the surface, all of the different components that are required to make that work. It's a lot of data to say, not be aware that another airport could face delays from that. So the more that you interconnect those sensors, those warnings, the more the other aircraft can shift balance and shift communication across the board so that we're able to track that.
Now, Tim, as the director of analytics at one of the world's largest airlines, how do you balance the need for rapid AI innovation with the operational realities and legacy systems that define commercial aviation today?
That's a very, very good question. The reality it is that we need to focus on a couple things. We need to make sure that our workforce is AI ready. The airline industry tends to be, we have large workforces that are generally experience driven. So how do we make sure that AI doesn't accelerate with its pace of change and leave behind some of those employees? What do we need to do to those employees so that they can be effective partners with AI, with that, whether or not that includes, coding assistance or content generation or even workflow orchestration? These are not just for IT employees anymore. These are going to be brought into the general workforce. And in terms of bringing AI into our legacy systems, what we're really leaning into is to say, how can we augment what we have in place to rapidly make use of AI? And really, one of the things that we're doing right now is we have a lot of tools to help manage weather disruptions, but a lot of those tend to be what's called deterministic. They require a human to say, when do I use them and how do I use them? So what we're doing is experimenting with putting AI on top of all those systems and basically creating a network anomaly detection that is continuously scanning our network of 8 hubs and 6,000 flights a day to detect any sort of risk, any sort of constraints that might develop, and recommend mitigation techniques that will bring the system back into control. And that could include making cancellations, but it also could include rerouting passengers proactively to avoid weather. It could involve rescheduling some of our crews so they have more buffer time so they can handle delays without having disruptions. So we're finding ways to use technology and augment it with some of the new AI capabilities.
All right, I have another question before we move on. I'd like to just push it out to the entire group and anyone that would like to respond. I'm a business guy, and this is at Heathrow, for example, with British Airways. This is a £7 billion investment. That's a lot of investment. So how do I evaluate the return on investment for these types of AI initiatives, particularly the benefits like increased resilience or safety, can be difficult to quantify. Does anybody have some advice for me?
Yeah, I can talk a little bit how we're doing that at American.
Please.
You're right. It's really hard to evaluate the impact of a lot of these systems when there's so much happening simultaneously, whether it be weather, passengers, so many things are occurring simultaneously. So what we've done is we've started to capture all of that information at the end of the day, all the weather, all the crews, all the passengers, all the disruptions, and all the outcomes and the decisions that were made. So we can start to use AI to concentrate to say and focus what was the benefit of this particular investment, holding in control all the other things that are noise, if you will. And that allows us to really understand, did we actually see the needle move on the investment we're making by comparing it and trying to filter out all the extraneous information?
All
Yeah,
right, very good.
maybe I'll just quickly add, I think the question you asked, Kevin, is a key one and a very difficult one. It's hard to know when you had a certain weather forecast and you made decisions what the counterfactual would have been if you'd had different weather forecasts and made different decisions. But one thing that we're trying to do is relate the verification that we do of the products that we provide to airlines like American Airlines in a way that's operationally relevant. So measuring not just how good was the weather, but when we translate it into the impacts on the airport, how good were those predictions?
All right, we are here today with John Williams, Sonny Westcott, Priyanka Dank, and Tim Niznik. Look, you won't find a more qualified panel to talk about aviation and AI adoption. So if you have a question or a comment for our guests today, just pop them into the chat feature, and we'll try to get them into the flow of the show today. And we may have some time at the end for your questions as well. All right, everyone, I'd like to move us on to our second discussion point to that today, and that is enhancing safety, efficiency, and decision making with AI-driven weather intelligence. I was interested to see in some of my research for our session today that Google's artificial intelligence research lab, DeepMind, recently introduced a thing called GenCast, an AI-based weather forecasting model capable of accurately predicting weather up to 15 days in advance. Experts tell us that GenCast outperforms traditional models. Is that so? John, what are your thoughts on GenCast?
Yeah, this is, as I said at the top, this is an exciting time in our business. Traditionally, we have made weather forecasts by using observations to assemble a view of the current state of the atmosphere, and then using physics-based simulations for how that's going to play forward. And one of the things that some of these new AI methods has allowed the industry to do is to directly learn from observations of the weather at one time and then the next reanalyses, they're called, directly how the weather is going to develop. And Google is one of the players in this. There are a number of others. NVIDIA is one, Pangu Weather. Microsoft has a model. And many of these models are performing very, very well compared to the traditional models, and have the benefit of running much, much faster, maybe as much as 10,000 times faster. And one of the things that does is it opens the door toward generating large ensembles of forecasts that tell us not just what the most likely forecast is going to be, but what the different ways are that the weather could play out, which gives us a whole nother dimension of ability to plan for maybe less likely or extreme weather that could have a big impact on operations. We are, at the Weather Company, opportunistically grabbing all of these new models that we can and running them as part of our system. We have a system of systems approach where we integrate all the best forecast models from around the world, both the traditional ones and these new AI-driven ones, and we form a consensus that's better than any of those individual forecasts, and we get this picture of what the different possible outcomes are. We have a collaboration with NVIDIA in particular to try to move these models, which have so far been at about a 25-kilometer scale, down to a 3 or 4-kilometer scale. And it's very exciting times, as I said.
So rather than resisting these tools as, I don't know, competitors to your status quo, it sounds like the Weather Company is really being ardent in taking on board all of these tools. Really, more data equals better decisions.
Yeah, absolutely. And one of the things we've found is that some of the models, when we put them into our consensus forecast system, do help, and then some of them don't. Even if they perform well on their own, it's sort of independent information going into our system that really adds the most in terms of our consensus forecast performance, and then also being able to cover the span of all the possible things that may happen, may play out in the weather.
Now, Priyanka, how is Airbus using these kinds of AI-powered weather intelligence tools to support flight planning?
Yeah, sure. So Airbus, as you know, it's a manufacturing company. It manufactures aircraft, and we have the big data lake called Skywise, which is connected to 12,000 airlines, and we are getting the sensor data, weather data, etc. And also comparing it with the historical data we have from the maintenance logbooks, from the events in the past. And so this is the kind of open data platform, also open to the airlines, and we are collecting all this data, and also this data based on this data lake, we are doing the route optimization, predictive analysis, maintenance tasks. So yeah, so that's how Airbus would like to support their customers in order to go around this weather or collect the weather intelligence using the data.
I see. I see. So a little different for Airbus. Now, Sunny, federal emergency response, how is AI enhancing your ability to provide timely and actionable weather intelligence that supports safety and emergency response?
Yeah, so there's a lot to be said. We utilize a lot of our different partnerships, so everything from Intel and NVIDIA. So we did utilize both to do a historic review to be able to say what were the trends at this particular site over the last, 40, 50, even up to 90 years, to say how often is lightning taking out this ability for operation? Is it increasing? If so, we need to figure out a way to operate within increasing lightning. We need to incorporate a lot of the historic increases that are starting to trigger. We do look at all of the models as well. I'm a big advocate for never putting all your eggs in one basket when we're looking at any of these weather phenomena. So when we're talking about training AI and we're looking at the different models, everyone's got a favorite model, and I always advocate not to do that. to make sure that you're always doing a checks and balance system to get a low and a high, and then to find out where your pain point is within those two. When we're looking at AI and its ability to forecast going forward and to be able to give that information to our emergency managers, we're always advocating for the transparency behind it. What is the AI running off of? Is it running on the European model, the GFS, the NAM, the HRRR? There's all these different models that are out there, the ICON. And to say that some of them are making their own new models and some of them are just an AI amalgamation of historic models. So repackaging is sometimes occurring. When we have the difference between continental and tropical storms as well, some people say, well, it does really well with this particular type of storm event. Does not mean that it's going to be able to give a 10-day forecast for tropical weather. And a big advocation we give there is with tropical forecasts, you need a low at the surface. You need something that's already there for the model to be able to prog it, moving it forward in implication, not to just say in 2 weeks a low is going to develop. You need some of this general understanding of physics provided to emergency managers. So I would argue AI has both a role in forecast and historic review of weather data, as well as the ability to take that physical conversation that comes from a technical professional and bring it down to a level that makes more sense for them.
Historical review of weather data. This might be a little divergent, but I mean, you're talking about 90 years looking back, lightning strikes. So you can potentially empirically demonstrate climate change with your models.
Yes. So barometric pressures are the main shift. So when we talk about weather hazards at the surface, we're talking about symptoms of a change of a root cause. The root cause being changes in your barometric highs and lows. Your lows are getting deeper, your highs are getting higher because the atmosphere itself is expanding. As it gets warmer, it will expand in different ways, which will cause storms to act more erratically. But this review of historics will give you an immediate use case of lightning is increasing. You can go to the government, ask for a grant at this point. I have definitive proof. My site has seen an increase in straight line winds over 75 miles per hour. I need to build against that threat. It has increased 14% over the past 18 years and 36% over the past 40 years. Therein by, I need to start addressing this if this continues in this pattern, which AI would then give you that forward prog of that percentage at baseline, assuming no increase or additive shift. So this is the best use case of our automated sensor data, which many of our sensors were put in around World War II globally. So we have data all over. Other countries have the same information available to them as well.
That's fascinating. All right. Now, Tim, how is American Airlines using AI to integrate weather intelligence into your day of operations planning and flight dispatch? And what measurable impact have you seen in terms of things like efficiency or delay reduction?
Yeah, in many ways. So we're ingesting the best forecast possible from John and his company, and we're making sure that we ensure that weather does not compromise safety either in the air or on the ground. So in the air, we're utilizing this data to avoid areas of known turbulence or to avoid areas where there could be convective weather or thunderstorms that may be unsafe. And so we're constantly probing and constantly making adjustments to find the most safe, most comfortable ride possible. But on the ground, at our hub airports, we have thousands of employees conducting tens of thousands of tasks on an airport surface that could also be impacted by weather. So one of the things that we've done also at the airports is to install computer vision that is using AI to real-time monitor and detect anything that may compromise safety. And that could be anything from, are our employees wearing vests? Are they following compliance for safety measures? Are they staying within the envelope of safety around the aircraft? And these things become especially important during inclement weather. And so we're able to harvest that information real time and actually take actions when we observe or get alerted to things that are unsafe or inefficient. And so we've taken the motto around safety, which is, you see something, you say something, and you do something. We've applied that to AI. So we're using AI to constantly look and constantly see what's happening. And we're using AI to say something, generate alerts, generate predictions to say, hey, we're seeing something. You may want to take action and then do something. Our employees then can make real-time adjustments to say, hey, what we're seeing here is not appropriate for the conditions at hand, or it may be about efficiency. We're using computer vision to timestamp all the activities that go on in an airport so that we can real-time track when we're getting behind based on the actual load of that aircraft and number of passengers, so we can make mitigated action. We could maybe call additional folks to help, turn that aircraft faster based on where they are in that turn process. So really leaning into a lot of the technology around computer vision, but that needs to be processed, and it needs to be processed accurately.
We are here today with Tim Nisnik from American Airlines, Priyanka Dank from Airbus, Sonny Westcott, a Federal Emergency Response Chief Meteorologist, and John Williams from the Weather Company. If you have some questions or comments for our group, please pop it into the chat feature. And folks, we do have a question coming in from our audience today. I'd like to put it out to the entire group, so just jump in if you have something to say. But Esme is asking this question. What's the most practical way AI can help streamline daily airport operations without overwhelming current systems and teams? Anyone have a comment or advice for Esme?
Well,
I think Tim actually had a good nugget with the alert system. I do think the alerts are arguably, as long as they push in the right directions. So scaling the message to either the staff or the flyers. Subsequently, as long as your alerts are based off of the empirical, what's occurring either upstream or on site, or a threat that's developing on the horizon, a lot of people would prefer to have the information on hand than to be surprised by it or not told information. So I would say the alerting is probably the biggest lean forward that AI can really help. A trigger has happened, the alert message goes out, and it utilizes a lot of the good data scraping to be able to give that information enough background to be comprehensive.
Very good. Also, we have another question coming in here. All these prediction models are actually based on past data, but it is well known that the past is not a guarantee of the future. So how can predictions made from these models be qualified to be reliable in order to make safe decisions for the present and future of aviation? Anyone have some feedback?
Well, I have some thought on both of those questions. In the first one, I think Sonny's absolutely right that, sort of alerting and a well-designed system is really important for surfacing the information a decision maker needs at the time that they need it and not overwhelming them with too many screens or too much to look at. But one of the things I wanted to highlight that's maybe a little bit in a different direction for this conversation is the importance of having human experts over the loop. And that's one of the things that we've done at the Weather Company for a number of years. So even though we're using these AI-driven models and other models and processing them in an automated way and putting the data out, we have human forecasters who are watching the system, making nudges, making corrections when they see that the AI is not doing the optimal thing, and are creating reports, risk reports for our customers. We have meteorologists embedded in several major airlines who are working directly with the air traffic control coordinators and the dispatchers to help interpret what this AI is saying in a way that makes it applicable directly to them. And in terms of the prediction model trends, yeah, they're based on past data. That's always the case, I think, when we develop models. But we've been, I think, presently surprised that some of the AI-driven models seem to be learning something about physics and do seem to be able to generalize to some of the conditions that are unlike what they've seen before. For instance, there aren't very many tropical cyclones in the training data set, and yet they can do quite well in predicting tropical cyclones. I think visible verification, relevant verification is the key so that we can be transparent about how well our models are doing. Explainable AI was mentioned earlier. That's all super important for developing trust and ensuring that these models we're developing are going to work well in the future for aviation needs.
So I would build on that. On the reliability side of the house, yes, they're reliable in the sense of knowing an area is going to get hit with something. It's going to produce lightning, flood, hail, tornadic activity, severe convective weather in some capacity or another, that you're able to say, we're concerned about these states, we're concerned about these operations, we're looking at this time frame. Do you know the exact amount of rainfall that might be produced from the sky? No. Do you know the totality of lightning strikes, the total count of tornadic activity until it's occurring? Likely not, but it is able to help us refine where we're moving resources, search and rescue teams, how we're changing our operations, how we're alerting society so that they shelter for the amount of time that is necessary so that they're not looking at us for false alerting. That's also a big part. But to say that, can you rely solely on AI? This year will be a great example of that. Our tropical cyclone period for the Atlantic, our hurricane season kicks off here in just 11 days. And one of the names already for this year, Barry, was a hurricane recently. And if you go right now and you ask, is Hurricane Barry going to be bad this year? It will go and pull the historic Barry and tell you about that one and draw it as a conclusion for this year. There's going to need to be so much validation going forward that arguably transparency is not only paramount, but definitely required by our meteorologists to say AI is doing well here, but it doesn't handle everything great. And it's the honesty side of the house. We're trying a new technology and we're doing our best with the information we have. Yes, the atmosphere will continue to operate in ways that we have not seen before because we're reaching a new threshold that we haven't been in operational capacity before. We didn't have the grid back when it was hotter. So when we're looking at being able to model things properly, we're doing the best with the information we have and scaling it to what we're seeing the atmosphere is capable of producing, not just here in the US or in the UK, but also in Australia. If they're seeing 2 million lightning strikes and 3 feet of rain, that means the atmosphere is capable of producing that. Should we be looking at similar markers in other countries from similar storms? AI can help us do that.
Now,
And
Priyanka,
yeah,
what's
I would
what's your take on this? I imagine predictive models are important for Airbus, perhaps in a different way.
Yeah, sure. So I would like to add this to the comments from John and Sunny that the verification and validation, it's very much important, and we have also this in mind. So this human in the loop and human validation, it's a key because we cannot rely solely on AI. AI can produce false positive, false negatives, etc. So it's not a very good approach to rely solely on AI. So definitely we need to have this human in the loop approach. And I also would like to add something, for example, the regulatory aspect that we have in Europe, because as Tim was mentioning, the computer vision use cases, and in Europe we are not allowed to monitor the human activities because it's also part of the EU AI Act. So we have some restrictions and we have some kind of rules that we need to follow when we implement this kind of AI stuff into the daily operation. So definitely it's very attractive, it's very promising technology we have, but we need to go it with very in slow and careful manner.
All right, very interesting, fascinating discussion. Before we move on to our next discussion point, there is another comment here from Galena. Really interesting discussion. AI in aviation definitely comes with its own set of challenges, especially when safety and compliance are non-negotiable. The way AI is being used for weather intelligence is a game changer. It's not just about efficiency, it's about making smarter decisions in high stakes situations. And I think that's a really great way of summing up what we've been talking about. Thank you, Galena, for your contribution here today. And that moves us into our third discussion point, and that really is using AI to navigate disruptions caused by extreme weather events. And I'm curious about how these lessons may be transferable to other industries. Now, John, how is the weather industry leveraging AI to protect and manage disruptions caused by extreme weather events? And how could those lessons that you've learned extend to other industries?
Yeah, I think there are two key components of this. One is that while seeing a display of the weather is very helpful, and those of us who geek out on weather will happily look at that any day, what most people care about is how the weather impacts them or their operations or the safety of their operations. And so one of the important applications of AI is to be able to translate the weather into the operationally relevant situation. And I think one way that we've spoken already about how you can have large ensembles of weather forecasts, but you can then develop scenarios of different ways that the weather might play out and understand how each one of those could translate into the airport operations. So for instance, we could look at the wind speed and wind direction at an airport and figure out what runways are likely to be in use and what orientation. We can predict what the arrival and departure rate capacity is likely to be. We can look at what the position and intensity of the thunderstorms may be and what that means for the various routes into and out of an airport, or what a government aviation authority may, when they may institute a ground delay program or a traffic flow management initiative. All of those things translate the weather scenarios into the impacts on the operation and allows you to be intelligent about what actions you may take. So instead of saying this is the most likely weather, here's the action that makes sense against the most likely weather, you can say, here are all the different ways the weather can play out, and I want to take my playbook of different actions I could take and test them against all of those different scenarios. And I think that paradigm works really well in aviation, and it's very relevant to other industries as well.
Priyanka, what's your take on this? What do you see as the most promising AI advancements on the horizon or currently in aviation, and how should industry leaders in other industries prepare to take advantage of them?
Yeah, sure. So we have different trends in ongoing in AI. So yeah, as Tim mentioned, computer vision, generative AI, all this technology, we should use it carefully. So we also have AirTech at Airbus, which is especially the service or technical assistance center, which is providing support to the aircraft on ground. So whenever aircraft needs to be grounded by any reason, maybe due to weather, maybe it's a breakdown or any problem with the aircraft. So we are tracking this and we are having this support on the ground. So with this center, and this center is using AI to understand what is the problem, to have this dashboarding created by AI. So definitely it's helping them to also assist those airlines in 20 minutes. So yeah, so we have the technology in hand, and we should make careful use of it. Definitely with the with the right approach. And this is what I would like to also the other industries can take this out, because we have this data strategy where we need to connect the different data coming from the flight operation, from the so maintenance, as I mentioned, so historical data, live data, and we should integrate it nicely. So we should have the data strategy to make use of AI.
Now, Sunny, you've given us some great examples of how AI is being used to manage disruptions from extreme weather. What other sectors might learn from these tools and experiences?
Yeah, so every critical infrastructure sector takes its largest toll from weather phenomena. The energy sector, more than 85% of outages are attributed to weather. When you're looking at supply chain disruptions globally, when you have a tropical cyclone hitting an iron ore mine in Australia, that impacts the steel production in China, which impacts the airport or the imports here in the US. When you're looking at wheat impacts in Russia, that has immediate implications for Egypt, for North Korea, for Italy, all the different importers across the board. So we're looking at food and ag, we're looking at the water sector when we're talking about the waterway systems, looking at water flows coming in from torrential downpours, being able to do the right shedding for the load on the grid during extreme heat events or high wind events or major outages triggered by a severe storm event. When we're looking at delays for barges on the river system when the river's running too low or it's too full, all of these things can be tied in with AI, but the sector implications across all 16 sectors across every country, when we're looking at security risks from personnel physically on site during high heat days, not being able to go out and do physical checks of systems, but we're also looking at security risks, weather events and cyber attacks starting to couple up. So it's not just one thing, it's definitely the entirety of the operation. And from an Air Force side of the house, as a prior Air Force lead meteorologist, when we're looking at being able to do troop movements, exercises, drop zone forecasts, any of these things where we need to move supplies, we need to move people, we need things done, the operational side of everybody's sector takes some level of a hit from weather, making it more comprehensive, improving the forecast, the timing, the delay scope, being able to shift resources quickly. All of that comes into play on the operations side, whether it's from an ops center, whether it's from the National Weather Service, whether it's from a privatized industry. It doesn't necessarily change the scope of the impact. It's about having the information, as they said, having the actual intelligence able to make that decision in that timely manner is really what's going to be critical going forward with the weather events changing.
Now, Tim, what's your take on this? What are some broader insights that could be applied to other complex logistics heavy industries?
I think one that comes to mind is using AI to help develop a feedback loop that is capable of learning from experiences. So all these industries have to make decisions based on weather. So one of the things that we started doing is as we experience every single day, can we start to identify similar days? Can we start to identify similar scenarios? And then can we start to look at the data that's coming out of this and say, what are those best practices? What are those playbooks that are most effective for this particular type of day? And then start to use that to predict how we want to respond for future events. So there is a huge opportunity, not just in the airline industry, but in other industries to harvest all this data that's coming out of the inputs, but also the decisions and the outcomes, and to learn from that in an automated and a continuous fashion.
Well, folks, where's our time gone? We're nearly out of time. I want to say this has been a fantastic discussion. Um, I would like to ask if each of you could please provide us with one quick action item that our listeners can do and our viewers can do to take advantage of the ideas and advice here today. Tim, do you have an action item for us?
Yeah, it's not a very sexy one, but it's anytime we talk about IA, we need to retain focus on data governance. Because if these large language models are really data hungry, and if we feed them, incomplete, unstructured, or biased data, we're going to get bad AI coming out of them. So we're going to have to make sure that we have good data that's cleansed, that quality, and those go back to some of the preparatory work that sets the stage for really what AI is capable of doing. So don't lose focus on kind of the preparation part of it.
Thank you. That's Tim Nisnik, Director of Analytics at American Airlines. Tim, thank you so much for being part of our panel today. And that takes me to Priyanka Dank. Priyanka, you are a data scientist. What are your thoughts? And do you have an action item for our viewers today?
Yeah, sure. So I would like to suggest to evaluate AI readiness of your team and your company or yourself. So are you ready to bring AI in your team and in your culture? So as Tim also mentioned, the upskilling strategy we need to. So AI is the technology, and we need to upscale. So everyone needs to upscale himself, herself, and also the team, also the company itself. So I would suggest maybe to evaluate the AI readiness in your domain and in your team to take benefit of the technology.
That is Priyanka Dank, data scientist and AI strategist at Airbus. Priyanka, thank you so much for being part of our discussion today.
Okay.
Now, Sunny, do you have an action item for us?
Yeah, absolutely. So every time that I advocate for utilizing all the raw data that's out there, I want to make sure that we're also looking for our canary in the coal mine, our matching partner on the global scale. So looking at your temperature profile, your precipitation profile, your climatological standing, finding the other country that most matches your current standing, looking at what they're experiencing, what are they doing about it, utilizing AI to understand your data, your implications, looking at your partner country, your partner region, looking at what they're doing, and then looking at surmising what's the quickest way to get to a better result. What's the best practice that they're doing, that we're doing, that we can share to continue this global platform of operations. So making sure that we're looking everywhere for the raw data that's out there and that we're reading the reports that are coming from it, not blind trust, but making sure that we're double checking all the work that's coming out from both sides of the house, the human side and the AI side.
That is Sunny Westcott. She is a Federal Emergency Response Chief Meteorologist. And Sunny, thank you so much for being part of our discussion today. And finally, John Williams. John, do you have an action item for us?
Yeah, those were all terrific. And I would say I'll boil it down to have a weather strategy. Weather intelligence is a competitive requirement these days. And part of that strategy should be to embrace uncertainty. We at the Weather Company are proud to have the world's most accurate forecasts as measured by a third party. But that's not enough. You need to know the different ways that the weather could play out, harness that along with the huge amounts of data we increasingly have to relate that to business outcomes, and then drive those with humans over the loop to make the best decisions for your business.
That is John Williams, Senior Director at the Weather Company. John, Sunny, Priyanka, Tim, it has been great speaking with you today. Look, we talk about AI and digital transformation on this show, and I can sense a real excitement in this group about the future of AI and how it can be applied in this way to really move the needle. So I really appreciate your perspectives, your advice, and perspectives are spot on. Thank you so much. I hope that we get a chance to talk again soon. And to everyone joining us today, thank you too. Join us again next time in 2 weeks on June 3rd with another great panel of guests when we will be discussing the topic of unleashing your creativity and innovation with AI. That should be an interesting discussion. In the meantime, if you'd like to find me, you can do so on LinkedIn, and I'm happy to connect there. Just check me out. I'm Kevin Crane, and you can check out my weekly audio podcast, the Digital Transformation Podcast. But for now, that'll do it for this episode of AI Talk. And until next time, I am Kevin Crane saying thanks for watching.